Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for spending your afternoon with us. I promise it's going to be useful and fun. There are lots of amazing videos coming your way. I'm Upma. I'm the General Manager for Level 3, which is a co-working space in partnership with Unilever Foundry and Padang & Co. We build ecosystems, so we connect startups to corporates and to ecosystem partners to drive innovation. We have around over 60 startups. Genero is one of our very, very old startup who's been with us for a very long time, and it's been a pleasure seeing their journey with Unilever and otherwise. Today's workshop is very useful and very handy. It's all about dealing with the current crisis and how do you continue to create amazing content that everybody wants to see. One of the studies recently said that the consumer want us to talk to them and not go all quiet. They want to be entertained, and to be entertained, you need great content. But how do you create great content when you're stuck inside your home? But not to worry, Janero's been doing a fantastic job about it, but I won't tell you any more about it. I'll let Charlotte, Joe, and Ben talk to you over that. I have had a peek through the session and the slides. There are some amazing videos. Just a few housekeeping stuff from me. Please keep your questions coming in. You can either put them in the chat or in the Q&A. If you have any technical problems at any time, please just raise it in the chat and we will take it into a private conversation and help you troubleshoot. With your questions, you can, upvote the questions if they're already over there, if somebody else has put it out there. After this, you can connect with us if you have any questions and you'd like to talk to the Genero team personally. We will share the slides and the recording later on with you all. So not to worry, don't need to take notes. Just enjoy the session, keep it interactive. And now over to you, Charlotte. Have a fantastic session, everyone.
Sorry, Upma, it's Joe here. So just before Charlotte, hey, I just want to give a bit of an intro to the session for the guys that are on the call. So, hi everyone, my name is Joe. I'm the general manager at Genero here in Asia. And just for everyone's benefit, if you haven't heard of us before, as well as being a level 3 startup and working with Unilever, we are a global content creation platform. So we effectively connect brands and businesses with a global network of creators. We have 130,000 creators on the platform in 180 markets. And those creators are all shapes and sizes. So everything from animators to filmmakers, to boutique creative agencies, to photographers and beyond. So really the Genero platform is about kind of connecting brands to creators around the world. And also supporting a more, digital way of working, which in the current climate with everybody working from home is obviously hyper kind of relevant, the idea of remote working. So we have a collaboration platform which allows brands, marketing teams, in-house teams to collaborate with Genero creators to manage productions safely and remotely. So I think really the kind of what we wanted to do today was, because we're a platform, we speak to lots of different clients in lots of different categories, and we also speak to lots of different creators. And so it's really about sort of distilling those conversations down into, I guess, sort of 5 handy tips and ways to think about content for everyone on the call today. I think, as the pandemic has evolved, we as I say, we've sort of stayed in touch with our community, and so I guess it's been interesting to see how creative solutions are being applied in different markets by different creative companies, given the kind of pandemic and how it's affecting our industry and the restrictions on the ability to produce content. So so what we're going to do today is going to share sort of 5 key ways to approach content that brands can kind of implement in the current climate. And we've also got Ben Ducker on the call, who is the creative director and founder of one of our platinum creators, which is Skin and Bone. And he's going to talk through a recent project for Ben and Jerry's, so one of the Unilever brands, where we were sort of pre-production a day before kind of the COVID situation really kicked off, and we had to pivot our whole production plan within sort of 24 hours. So he's going to talk through kind of the thinking behind that and how we approach that. So I'll hand over to Charlotte now, who's going to sort of lead the rest of the presentation.
Thanks so much, Joe. I'm also going to turn off my webcam just to make sure we don't put additional pressure on the connection, but I just wanted to say hello, everyone, and thanks for joining. And we'll jump right into it. So just a quick overview of what we'll be covering today. So firstly, I'll provide some context around the impact of COVID-19 on brands and what this means for their advertising efforts. And from there, we'll jump straight into the different possible approaches that Joe mentioned to creating content within the current climate. I'll also just briefly explain how we as Genero, since we have that global community, how we really tap into that community to keep abreast of the production landscape worldwide, and how this can benefit our clients. So as Ukma mentioned, please don't hesitate to ask any questions at all during the presentation, or any thoughts you have, or even if you want to send some details on a production issue that you're currently struggling with and you would like to get our input or our advice on that, then that's obviously the moment to do it. So don't hesitate to do that. So let's jump right into it. So as we obviously all know by now, the impact of COVID-19 is unprecedented and has affected every single aspect of our lives, our communities, and our businesses. So as a global platform, we speak on a daily basis to clients, to brands in many different sectors, and the initial reaction from almost everyone, and rightly so, has been to pause marketing activity to get a sense of the impact on their businesses and to monitor how the situation is evolving. So it is becoming increasingly clear now that things will not just go back to the way they were, and the situation will last much longer than anticipated. So operating and learning how to operate within this COVID-19 climate is really going to be the new norm moving forward. So on top of that, leading experts and researchers all agree that people don't expect brands to stop advertising. Ukma already mentioned it, but consumers are looking for, to engage with brands. And on top of that, data from previous recessions show that long off-air periods have been damaging to brands and to their brand health and market share. So it's clear that brands can't simply stop communicating. However, what needs to fundamentally change is how they communicate. So consumers are expecting brands to be an active part of the solution to the global crisis, and extra scrutiny will fall on brands who seem unsympathetic or who are looking to profit from the crisis in any way. And there have already been quite a few examples of brands getting in trouble, which is one example of a major brand like McDonald's, who ran social ads where they modified their logo and separated the two famous golden arches to promote social distancing, something then that can seem very innocent to some people, but there was a big backlash on social media from other people feeling like this was very opportunistic. So it's often a very fine line, and it can be difficult for brands to navigate this. However, it can also be a real opportunity for companies to focus on their brand purpose. And this is true really for companies large and small. I know we have quite a few startups joining us here on this webinar today. So also for startups, this situation should really be seen as an opportunity to focus on communicating how you can positively add value to people's lives. So in order to do that, communication obviously needs to be positive, it needs to be proactive and relevant, with a real focus and an authentic focus on the consumer rather than on the product, a focus on informing and educating rather than on selling. So that is an approach that really allows brands to build and maintain long-lasting relationships with consumers. And a great example of how brands can do this in the current climate is actually a brief that we ran for Genero, where we reached out to our global community of creators asking them to share their stories with us on how they are dealing with the pandemic. And we've really had an amazing response from the community with lots of submissions, a lot of creativity, a lot of uplifting and beautiful stories. And there's one in particular that we wanted to share with you today. It's from a female filmmaker and a brand new mother who gave birth during the pandemic and during the lockdown, talking about her lockdown experience. So as you'll see, it's a great example of a creator becoming the director, the crew, the talent, all from the comfort and the safety of her own home. So I'll just play this for you. So this brief was not for a particular brand, but it is a great example of how brands can tap into a global community of creators to create those real and authentic and uplifting stories, and can use that to be a force of optimism by curating and promoting stories of real people during the crisis. And all of this content that can be easily created and shot by the creators in their own homes. So a shift in communication is crucial. And on top of that, the pandemic has really turbocharged certain trends that were already in place, like a year-on-year increase in video consumption and social media usage, obviously with people spending more time at home. So this is a trend that is expected to remain very strong even after the pandemic. And while that's obviously a great opportunity for brands to connect with their audience, the fact that video production is so heavily restricted at the moment only makes it more challenging for brands and for marketeers. And it can be quite overwhelming for brands to kind of figure out how to navigate these challenges, especially with everyone working from home and all the new and unfamiliar ways of working. So that's really the objective of today's presentation, is to help brands, agencies, marketeers think of new ways to create that content and keep engaging with their target audiences, which is so important. So the usual approach is, of course, live shoots. For many companies, that is heavily restricted at the moment. There's global directives to cancel all of the live action shoots. So luckily, there are several other ways to create very relevant and high quality content. And we'll go through these and show you some case studies and work that we've done for other companies that can hopefully serve as a source of inspiration for you moving forward. So point one, which is a very important one and one that has really stood out to us when talking to our clients. Many brands in the world are currently struggling with the same issue. They were either in the midst of creative development or were going full steam ahead in pre-production, ready for a shoot, and have now had to pause or cancel the project. And it's something that we've seen happening across many of our clients. And what's important here, and what we always try to emphasize, is that for each and every single of these projects, it's really worth doing the exercise and the thinking of alternative solutions and approaches in order to still be able to continue with the project without any delays or compromises on the creative, and without having to fully cancel the project, even if that means moving away from the initial plan of a live action shoot. So a great case study for this is Ben & Jerry's, a project that we've been working on during the pandemic and from before the pandemic. So I'll hand it over to Ben from Skin & Bone, who was the creator on this project, and he will talk you through this in a bit more detail. So Ben. I'll hand it over to you. Just let me know when to switch the slides. Ben?
Sorry, I think my microphone was off. Can you hear me all right? Can you hear me?
Yes, and the beautiful bird songs. It's nice.
Yeah. Can you hear me all right? I think my microphone was off. Sorry.
No worries. Okay, so we're just on the first slide. So
yeah, sure.
Thank
Hi,
you.
everyone. So, as Charlotte said, I'm Ben, CD and founder of Skin and Bone Agency. We've delivered a number of global campaigns for both established and startup brands and work closely with Janiro. Ben & Jerry's being one of our most recent commercials. So the brief was to create a series of online social ads that each landed one of the 6 new flavors and launched them into South Korea as a national launch. So we had to do 2 things. One was obviously land the product and the benefits of the product, but at the same time, really land what Ben & Jerry stood for as a brand, given that it was fairly new to market in these flavors. So the creative concept that we developed was taking a kind of handcrafted, paper engineered environment, and we worked with a BAFTA winning paper engineer, which is a real job apparently, to create these scenes. And again, that's to kind of really add value to the Ben & Jerry's craft brand tone and values that they have. And obviously it gives the visuals real cut through on a social media platform where you've got this completely fresh visual style. And then also we obviously dive into the ingredients and the food as the tub kind of explodes open. So the core insight to our concept was to look at the amount of ingredients that go into every Ben & Jerry's pint of ice cream and see those tubs kind of ripple and the lid explode off as we dive into all the good stuff. So if you just jump to the next slide for me, please. So here's a quick mood. Sorry, just jump one up. There's a quick mood board there just to sort of show you the world that we're going for. So in the bottom left, you've got some paper craft that we created as a kind of early test. And then up in the top right, you've got the kind of slow motion food porn moment that we would contrast that with as we dial up the kind of flavor cues. Thanks. So just move on for me. So there was as I say, kind of 2 halves to the creative. There was the food production, and then there was the stop motion and sort of scene production. And kind of before and after the lockdown, these took 2 very different approaches. So pre-lockdown, the food part of the shoot would have been handled with a food stylist on set to obviously craft the way that each individual ingredient should look. We would have had refrigeration to store the ice cream. We had miniature food cannons to fire the food up into the air so we could get that beautiful slow motion falling food shot that we needed. Obviously, there would be lots of crew, gaffers, directors, producers, and the camera we were looking at using was one of the best you can get your hands on in the world for slow motion shooting, called the Phantom, and that even comes with its own technical lighting cinematographer and to operate the camera. So yes, a fairly in-depth approach, but pretty typical to the way we would approach a food production. And then the second part of the commercial is the stop motion environment, this paper craft scene where the pint sits in the middle, and around it we have bespoke framework to emphasize each flavor that we're seeing. And again, similar setup, you'd have a studio with the paper engineer on set to make any necessary changes, the crew, the lighting, director, producer, and client would have been live streamed to our studio in London where we were shooting. So that was kind of pre-lockdown approach. Just move on for me. Obviously, as the guys have already explained, that kind of everything had to change the day before we went into shooting. So it was really close to the bone. The food production changed in a way that we then worked with an animator, a 3D model maker, and we took existing food assets from the brand. So bits of cookie dough, chunks of chocolate chips or banana slices, photography that they had existing in their brand library. And we were able to isolate those from the background on some occasions to create a kind of a PNG, if you like, on a transparent background. And then we create a backdrop of the Ben & Jerry's blue sky. And over the top of that, we have all our falling food ingredients. So as I said, there were 6 different scenes to create for the 6 different ice cream flavors. And using a depth of field, a parallax, and overlapping layers, we managed to create a similar effect to what we would have got on camera, all in CGI, to create the slow motion food moment. And then for the stop motion, we'd already created all of the paper assets, or the kind of the paper landscape. All it meant was that we had to allow a bit more time for feedback. So we had to do a bit more testing, because we knew that on the day there wouldn't be the opportunity to suddenly change the paper engineering and the landscape if it needed to be. So a lot of that and the scaling was shipped up from the paper engineer to our studio so that we could set it and light it. And the crew, we probably went from what would have typically been, let's say, approximately 10-person crew down to a one-man crew, using a self-shooting cinematographer and camera operator. And me directing and our producer were on live stream to kind of assist and be able to give feedback during the shoot. So again, you can see how drastically both elements of the shoot were scaled right down. There's a couple of images here of the paper engineering side of the shoot, the scenery side. And if we move on, have we got anything else with the commercial? So this is I'm not sure how laggy it'll be, but this is an example of a close to finished ad. And you'll see that we sort of start with the product in its bespoke paper engineered environment relevant to that flavor. As I said, each one of these had a different environment, and then quickly the lid will fly off and we go into this world of ingredients before coming back to the little environment.
Great, thanks, Ben. It's actually the final one that they've only
great.
Just gone live. They've just gone live, so I'll just play it for everyone to get an understanding of what Ben has been describing. Yes. Okay, great. Thanks, Ben. Thanks so much. So great example of a creative, of a team coming up with a very creative solution in order to ensure that the project can go ahead, and that there's no issues with the quality, or no reason to change the creative concept at all. So a second point is of course, not all creative concepts lend itself to being changed to a different type of shoot. So if a shoot is definitely not possible, then there are other ways to rethink your creative approach with new formats in mind. So a great example of that is a project that we did for Kleenex. So the brief was to create a suite of hyper-contextual 6-second bumpers for YouTube, spanning across multiple topics and genres. So depending on what people were searching for, they'd see a different ad that is contextually relevant. So this is just a compilation of some of the versions that we've done. So this is what will be served when someone is searching for allergy-related content, here for beauty content, comedy content, music-related content, and pets content for, when we're searching for cat or dog YouTube videos, which, let's be honest, we all do that once in a while. So even if you don't really have a great idea yet, and that's something that you can lean on our creators for as well. And since you signed up for this webinar, I believe you should have also automatically signed up for next week's session, where we'll actually be doing more of a deep dive specifically into animation and AR. So definitely join us for that one. If that's something you're interested in, we'll have two of our top creators joining us on that webinar as well. So, you can ask as many questions as you'd like on animation and AR and kind of get information from experts firsthand. So up until now, I've only spoken about approaches to creating original and new content. Of course, that's not always possible because of budget constraints, timing constraints. So a great alternative is using high quality stock images and video. So stock imagery will sometimes have a bit of a negative connotation, but we have a great example for you that will show you that if it's used in a creative way, it can actually be a very effective tool to tell your story, and it doesn't need to be substandard quality at all. So this example was for Fitbit, a project that we've done and delivered during the pandemic. I think delivery was around a week ago, where we have recreated an existing US ad from scratch. So by sourcing locally relevant stock imagery and new music that is relevant for the local markets here. So this was all turned around in 1 week. So something like this is really a great solution if you need assets within days or have a limited budget. And this also nicely fits in with what we discussed at the start about focusing on the consumer and adding value versus focusing on the product and trying to sell. So let me just play this for you as well.
To all of you doing your part on the front lines or at home, turning those living rooms into gyms, getting creative in the kitchen, taking a minute for yourself, and trying to get a good night's sleep. Thank you for doing what you can. We're all in this together.
Yeah, so again, all purely put together with existing stock footage. So you can really get a great result with that. So next up, reimagining. Brands often have a wealth of existing brand assets that can easily be given a new life and can be very effective on digital platforms. So there's not always necessarily a need to create new content or purchase new stock footage. So we work with a number of brands to transform their out-of-home content that is not as as usable or as effective at the moment, and to reimagine that for digital, social, and broadcast assets for immediate use as audience or spending most of their time inside and on digital platforms. But it also works just as well with any existing assets like TV assets, print assets, display assets. And what we really try to do at Genero is obviously go beyond simply resizing or simply cutting down a TVC for digital use. When we take a TVC and we reimagine it for digital and social, we're really looking for the optimal way to tell the story vertically in short form by adding animation, motion graphics. We add sound, make sure it works without sound. So make sure that everything is in line with the guidelines and the best practices of digital and social platforms. So it's not just an executional approach. There's a creative aspect to it as well, coming from the creative that we engage. So being a Google and Facebook marketing partner, we've produced hundreds of these campaigns for their clients, and we have a pool of creators who are specialized in this and have gone through all of the platform trainings, like, for example, Blueprint for Facebook. So we have a few examples just to show you ways on how you can leverage those existing assets in a very powerful and simple way. So the first one is a good example to show you what you can do with a simple static asset. At first sight, you might think that there's not much that you can do with that. So you might have some images or an old key visual. Well, we can take these and creatively turn these into moving assets by adding motion, transitions, and sound. So you'd get something like 1, 2, 3, please follow me now. 1, 2, 3, they follow me now. So this was for Maybelline, and we can create assets for all the different platforms, different aspect ratios, and all optimized for the specific platform. Another example is for Ocado, which is a UK grocery store. So we took their promo KV and reimagined it for Facebook and Instagram by adding motion to the different elements and ingredients, by adding sound, motion graphics. So making it all very energetic and dynamic for use on social media. Again, all without having to create or shoot new assets. So as a brand, it's worth going back through your archives and kind of see if there are assets that you haven't thought about in a while, or you didn't think you'd be able to do with anything anymore, and to tap into a global community and see what those highly creative and professional people can come up with for your brand, for your assets. And then lastly, Ponds. So this is a TVC example, an existing TVC for Thailand, reimagining it for social. Again, not just cropping it or cutting it down, but really optimizing it for the digital channel. So just to show you the original 15-second TVC.
แต่ยิ่งแต่งก็ยิ่งเช็ดหน้าก็ยิ่งหมองต้องนี่เลย Pond's Brightening Micellar Water ลบเมคอัพวับบูสต์ผิวใสวิ้งทุกครั้งที่เช็ดจะหน้าแน่นหรือหน้าสดผิวก็ยังดูใสดีๆ
Yeah, so then we cut it down to 6 seconds, very short.
ลบเมคอัพวับบูสต์ผิวใสวิ้งทุกครั้งที่เช็ด
So a very short amount of time to tell the story. We use fast cuts and a very unique visual technique that was recommended by the creator and that the creator came up with, of that swipe to capture the attention. Then in the 12 seconds.
แต่ยิ่งแต่งก็ยิ่งเช็ดหน้าก็ยิ่งหมองต้องนี่เลย Pond's Brightening Micellar Water จะหน้าแน่นหรือหน้าสดผิวก็ยังดูใสดีๆ
So of course here we had a bit more time for narrative, and we could include the different makeup application shots by using a split screen technique. Again, these are all like creative techniques proposed by the creator upon reviewing the TVC. So as you can see, many creative ways to take your assets, even static ones, and create something that's visually interesting and dynamic. And that brings us to our last point, full circle again, returning to live action shoots. So of course, the main priority and the main consideration for all brands and agency remains safety. So live production is obviously very difficult in many markets, most markets at the moment. But at Genero, we're tracking the situation very closely globally with our global production status map. So that's a up-to-date view of the level of production possible in almost 90 markets, and developed in collaboration with our creatives around the world. So I'm just gonna go out of the slides for a moment, and take you to the map, to the live map, just to show you what that looks like. So the idea is, this is the world map, of course, and the idea is that you can click on any market and see what the current production status is. So as mentioned, this is real-time data. The data is provided by our global network and is updated on a daily basis and has been verified against key news and government sources. So as you can see here, there are 4 different statuses, ranging from the basic post-production services all the way to full-scale production. post-production covers anything from animation and editing, NAR, so a few of the techniques that I was describing earlier, which can be done remotely and are possible in every single market in our community. It also covers studio product shoots, which can be done by many of our creators who have small studios at home. Then there are the small-scale studio productions, which are the smaller indoor studio shoots with a product, maybe with 1 or 2 talents, where clients can attend the shoots virtually and give feedback throughout. One step further are the medium-scale productions, where we can have a location, maybe an outdoor location with a very small crew, very limited cast, and of course, all within the necessary restrictions and safety measures of that particular market. And then lastly, full-scale productions, which is, the usual shoots that we're used to. As you can see from this map, that is, of course, very difficult globally, except in Taiwan and Vietnam, where since very recently restrictions have eased, so larger shoots are feasible, but again, with all the safety precautions in place. So for us here in the region, the markets where we can have medium scale productions would be like China, Japan, Australia, New Zealand. Australia is slowly easing restrictions as well, and they're actually looking like full production will be feasible pretty soon, within the next 2 or 3 weeks. Singapore is obviously still very restricted, unfortunately. So at the moment for Singapore, we're under phase 1, where post-production and home studio product shoots are possible. So as it's pretty clear from this map, the whole objective is to help our clients figure out where to shoot and to adjust their marketing plans accordingly. So if you need to arrange a shoot, we can provide you guidance on live production in the different markets, in alternative markets, and source those local production partners wherever needed. And while we wait for safer conditions and restrictions to be lifted more broadly, our creative network can also help with campaign strategy, creative ideation, so you're ready to go when the time is right and restrictions lift in your target markets. So if we post a brief on our platform, you can expect a deep, diverse pool of detailed creative treatments within a few days to select from. And that brings us to the end of the presentation. I hope I haven't lost too many people. Just as a very quick recap, as a summary. So be reactive when you need to pivot away from a shoot and you have campaigns that are currently on standstill. Don't just put them on hold or cancel, but reach out to us as Gennaro. We are actively helping clients to come up with alternative approaches in order to be able to continue the concept without delays or compromises, just like we did for Ben & Jerry's. Secondly, rethink your concepts in a way that don't rely on live action shoots. If you have to, approaches like animation and AR, very effective routes to bring your creative to life, and we'll go into more detail specifically on those in our session next week. Thirdly, repurposing. Original content creation is not always possible or even required, so there's a ton of high quality stock footage out there that you can repurpose for your brand in a very smart and creative way. Lastly, reimagining, obviously the fastest and cheapest way to get new content out of there. So go back into your archives, take a look, and lean on to Gennaro's trained creators who are specialized to get the best out of your assets. And then lastly, obviously be responsible with all your productions, and lean on Gennaro for advice and on guidance on where best to shoot, because we have an amazing community out there who we can tap into for innovative alternatives to create projects. So thanks so much for your time and attention. So we still obviously have Ben on the line from Skin and Bone and the rest of the Gennaro team, so we can take any of your questions, and if your comments, thoughts, if you're having a particular production challenge right now that you'd like to discuss, feel free to bring that up now. Thank you. it seems like it was a bit laggy. Our apologies for that, technology. So we can definitely share the deck afterwards as well, and all of the videos. So if there are no questions or no, and of course, feel free to reach out to us afterwards as well with any questions. No problem.
I guess if there are no questions at the moment, we'll wrap up. If you do still have questions, there is a feedback form just when we end the webinar. It will be there. You can feel free to send it to us via that, or you can email us at hello@l3.work. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us this afternoon. I hope it was productive, and we will see you for the next session next week. Have a wonderful week ahead. Bye-bye.